Good morning, guys. Today, Will Smith shares with us the idea of allowing fear to motivate us. So he says, let fear motivate you. And this came from his experience growing up and having opportunities. He recalls an example when he was about to begin his show, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and there were a couple of gentlemen that would want to meet with him. And Will Smith hated the fact that for whatever reason, he would either come up with excuses or he would be coming up with things that would prevent him from meeting with the two gentlemen and going after what he really wanted to do because of fear. And it got to the point where Will Smith just got sick and tired of letting fear stop him. So he says that in his early life, he developed a strategy for attacking fear. And that's what we have to do. So what fear can you attack today? Have a great morning, everyone.
Legs crossed, back straight, eyes closed, breathing in through our noses and out through our mouths. Deep, long breaths. Feel that power of you controlling your breathing. Feel that power of you keeping your back straight and your eyes closed, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's slightly painful. That's your true power. That's your determination. So use that power here, now, and forever. And see in your mind today how you will do when that music goes on as we work in the gym of life. But you gotta see it in your mind right now if you want to bring it out into the world. See yourself doing the best you can on all the stretches or exercises that we choose and do together here today, right here, right now, wherever we are. Because you were born to do that. You were born to use your determination to see in your mind what you want to create and then make real as you open your eyes and live your life.
Good morning, determination. How's everyone doing today? Another day in the gym of life, another chance to be better than we were last time. So here we go, determination, here we go. When I say go, we're going to start jogging on the spot as we usually do. But for now, you can just start walking on the spot as we slowly warm up our bodies and get ready for another session here together, another moment, a few moments here together. When I say go, we'll start jogging on that spot. Ready, and go. Always focused on our breathing and how we can control it, no matter what we're doing, wherever we are in life, wherever we go, not just in the stretches or exercises we're doing. Anytime we're using our bodies and our minds, let's remember how we can always take control of that breathing. same way, we can take control of our minds, our thoughts, and therefore our feelings. It's hard work, but just like everything else, with hard work comes all the best things in life. So here we go. We're almost there with the jog, almost there. Feel your body. All the things that are going on right now. Your arms moving, your heart beating, your breathing. That's your presence. That's phenomenal. You are phenomenal. And stop. All right. Walking on the spot. I'm just going to walk side to side here since I have enough space. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, make sure you have enough space as we work together here in the gym of life. The gym of life never ends, even though we may not be exactly where we want to be at school, at work, wherever it is that we would see and be with all the people that we love and always look forward to being with. But we're here right now together in this moment if you're watching this and you're doing this. So let's go, everybody. Here we go. Let's roll the shoulders first. 10 forward. Here we go. Again, doing the best shoulder rolls we've ever done. All the way to our ears and around. That's 4, 5. Let's do 10 forward. Here we go. All right, and backwards. Again, enjoying the process, enjoying the effort that we're putting in right now to be our best in whatever we're doing. That's what matters. That's what matters. And that can always keep us in our greatest gift, our presence. You're here, you're watching, you're doing, you are living. You have everything you need. Here we go. All right, arm circles forward. Let's do 10 forward again. Again, thinking about our breathing. Deep, long breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. And backwards. 10 arm circles backwards. Taking good air in and letting bad air out. Excellent. Okay, hands on the hips, bend the knees and side stretch. 5 on each side. Alright, let's do twists now. Keep your feet on the floor and just twist your body. Twist your hips. Again, just feeling the joy of moving your body. Alright, okay. And let's do 5 push-ups. Try your best. Here we go. Best 5 push-ups ever. Alright, 5 sit-ups, everyone. Here we go. Always doing your best. If you need to use your arms to lift up, for now, that's okay. Just keep going. Don't give up. Alright, let's do 5 squats. Here we go. All the way down, all the way up. Arms straight up, looking straight ahead. Excellent. Alright. Let's do 6 lunges. 3 on each side. Keeping our back straight, our body straight, looking straight ahead. Alright, good. And let's do 10-second plank. Belly's knees off the ground. Feeling the joy of being able to become uncomfortable in order to one day be comfortable doing this. Alright, and stand up again, everybody. And let's reach for the ceiling on our toes. Here we go. Or if you're outdoors, you're reaching for the sky. Again, feeling the joy of reaching, stretching, using those muscles in our body, all the parts of our body, to reach, to do better. Alright, actually touch the ceiling this time. Here we go. Excellent. Alright, and reaching now for your toes. Straight knees.
Hold it there for 10 seconds. Excellent. All right, good. And let's balance now. Grab one leg and balance. Really think about what you're doing. Find that point, and then pull that leg up towards your bottom. Bend the other knee if you have to. Feel the power of you finding your balance in this moment right now. And switch. It's the same way you can find your balance in whatever you're doing. Keep thinking. Keep trying different things. Again, bend that knee if you have to. And pull your foot up towards your bottom, and you should feel a pull on the front of your leg, front of your thigh. Alright, now let's hug our knee. Here we go. Once again, find that balance, work for it. There we go, bend that knee and lift or hug your knee fully. Give it a nice big hug. Alright, and switch. The other one now. Slowly coming up. Make sure you have plenty of space around you. Just in case you do lose your balance, you fall. You get right back up though. You know the truth, determination. We never give up. We get right back up and we keep going. No matter what. Alrighty. Okay, and let's sit down.
To Teo. Teo step over, loses the man, can't lose the goalkeeper. Balls to Messi! Hat-trick! Busquets, brilliant ball. Lionel Messi on the brink of a fourth goal! Oh, and he does it with style. 10 minutes to go. Barcelona in desperate need of a goal. They go for the... Oh my goodness! Unbelievable!
The fundamental discovery of the link between the vagus nerve and inflammation that we made was that the vagus nerve is sending signals that act like the brakes on your car. If inflammation is barreling down the hill and the brakes fail, all kinds of problems will occur. The FDA approved the basis of this idea as a new therapy to treat inflammation in patients with rheumatoid arthritis. I think this is launching a whole new era in medicine where bioelectronic medicine will begin to replace drugs.
That's a big statement.
It's a big statement, but it's backed by the facts. I see a world very soon where many, many people with rheumatoid arthritis in the United States will have this as a therapy. I have met some of the patients who spent 12 or 15 years in and out of wheelchairs using a cane, which she no longer needs. Her therapy is vagus nerve stimulation. She's now 7 or 8 years out from the implants.
Do you think that there's applications in diseases beyond arthritis?
100% I do. People who were suicidal, unable to care for their families, unable to work, and now they're not suicidal. They're caring for their families. They're back at work. So what is the cost benefit of that? Is it possible that the vagus nerve stimulation is reversing the inflammation that's causing the depression? It's really incredible, actually.
It is incredible. Welcome back to the show, everybody. So I have to tell you, we get, I don't know, 800, 1,000 requests a year to come on the show. And about 10 times a year, I request somebody to be on the show. And I was just telling this gentleman off camera that he's one of those people. I have really wanted to talk to him for a while. And you'll know why when this hour is over. You're going to learn a ton today, everybody. You're going to learn a ton about your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. You're going to learn about your vagus nerve. You're going to learn about healing, anxiety, trauma, longevity, all kinds of stuff. And I guarantee there's going to be a ton of things that we're going to cover today that you've not heard before in your life. So this is heavy note-taking stuff. My guest, I don't know what I would call him. He's an interesting man. I guess I call him the father of bioelectric medicine. I think he's one of the most important people on the planet today. I think he's creating a medical and mental health revolution for many people. He's a neurosurgeon, a scientist, and but more importantly than all of that, he's been somebody that's taught me a great deal, and I think he's going to teach you a great deal today. You need to get his book, The Great Nerve, by Dr. Kevin Tracey, who's my guest today. Dr. Tracey, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really looking forward to chatting about one of my favorite topics, and thank you for your kind words.
Well, you know, I feel very strongly about this. So, and by the way, everyone, in my private coaching work, I do a lot of work on your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems and how trauma affects us internally. And so he's going to give you the master class because I do the kindergarten class. So let's start out today. This is some basic education, Dr. Tracey, because for some people, they may not know. Let's just start out with what is the vagus nerve and why does it matter?
The vagus nerve is a nerve that starts in the base of your brain at about the level of your ears and travels down your neck, across your chest, into your abdomen. And along the way, it sends branches or fibers out and touching all the organs you never think about. Now we call it the vagus nerve, but you actually have two of them, like two thumbs and two kidneys, etc. And these two nerves on each side are even more complicated than that because within each of these two nerves in humans is 100,000 fibers, 100,000 individual nerve fibers. So when you talk about your vagus nerve, you actually have 200,000 of them. And all day long, the signals traveling up and down from your body to your brain in the vagus nerve and then back down from your brain to your organs. These signals are the fundamental basis of reflexes that operate to keep your organs functioning in a harmonious, healthy way. In other words, your heart and your kidneys and your lungs, they're all working all day long in a balanced, harmonious way when you're healthy because of reflexes traveling largely in the vagus nerve.
Gotcha. And that matters why. Let's dive deep into some stuff here, just for some basic stuff. I think it's been established sort of in the medical community the last decade or so that inflammation is probably the root of most disease in the body. You correct me for all the things I say that are wrong today, because there'll be a bunch of them. But assuming that that's sort of become the new foundational basis for what most people believe about disease in the body, that matters why as it relates. First off, is that probably true? And if it is true, why does that matter in relation to the vagus nerve inside our bodies?
It is true. And just to make it very concrete for those who might be interested, every year on the planet Earth, about 60 million people die. According to the WHO, 2/3 of those deaths are caused by conditions that you just alluded to, sort of chronic diseases that kill 2/3 of people who die every year, include cancer, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, obesity, and neurodegenerative conditions such as Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's. So, as you alluded to correctly, what those conditions all have in common is that inflammation either causes them or contributes to them by making them worse. And so the question that I've been thinking about for going on 40 years now in my laboratory at the Feinstein Institute in New York is, what is it that drives inflammation at the level of molecules, individual molecules and cells, and how can we use that information about what's driving inflammation in the body to stop inflammation? Now, in the late 1980s, my colleagues and I made some contributions to developing molecules that stop inflammation in many patients. And those molecules today go by the name of biologics. And you see them advertised on the nightly news. You see them advertised on all the Sunday football games. These biologics many of them are monoclonal antibodies, and they stick on cytokines, which are molecules made by white blood cells. And these cytokines can cause inflammation. So that's what we've known since the 1980s. And these drugs are very powerful, and they treat patients with conditions like rheumatoid arthritis and other conditions. But they don't cure the disease. So some other things are still going on. And so the fact that these biologics don't cure inflammation but can slow it down taught us that these molecules are very, very important in causing inflammation. But I found myself years ago wondering, well, if the immune system and our bodies have the ability to make these powerful inflammatory molecules, which can cause harm. it can cause serious damage to your organs if there's too much inflammation. And it can contribute to these other illnesses that can kill so many people every year on the planet Earth. And the real question I had was, how does the body normally control inflammation? Now, if you take what we just talked about from the vagus nerve, and I said reflexes are controlling the healthy balance of your organ functions, we've known for over 100 years or more that reflexes traveling in the vagus nerve control how fast your heart beats. If it beats too fast, signals in the vagus nerve slow it down. Reflexes in the vagus nerve control how much insulin your pancreas makes and how much glucose your liver can produce. So if this is what we've known all along, the question to me became, well, if reflexes are doing things to all the other organs, is it possible that reflexes in the vagus nerve are also controlling inflammation? That was the eureka idea. That was the eureka moment. But as you know from the book, we don't say eureka in the lab anymore. We say, holy shit.
Right. And by the way, everybody, we're going to cover so much today but we're going to talk about trauma here in a second too. So there's so much to this inflammation, vagus nerve, the sympathetic nervous system. There's so much to it, you guys, that over the next 5 years, you think AI is a revolution. And by the way, it even fits inside this discussion. This is going to be a revolution. I'm telling you, it's been part of my work for a long time on just performance and well-being. But so one more foundational thing I just want to lay out there is there used to be this adage that, Plato said a long time ago, you can't heal the body without healing the soul, right? And there's this adage, there's a lot of, growing up, there were these, theories of, well, if you've got trauma and you're under great stress, you're going to die younger. And that was kind of theoretical. But now we actually know, don't we? So explain to us a little bit foundation, and then we're going to get into some great stuff. How does trauma in our life, or anxiety, or things that happened in our childhood or in our lives actually affect this inflammation in our body? Like we've proven this now. So give us the correlation of why unhealed trauma is detrimental to your physical health, not just your mental health.
So Plato was right. I happen to agree with him, and your quote from him is spot on. If you think of the signals traveling in the nerves as controlling all your organs, then the fundamental discovery of the link between the vagus nerve and inflammation that we made was that the vagus nerve is sending signals that act like the brakes on your car. So if inflammation is barreling down the hill and there's nothing and the brakes fail and inflammation spins out of control, then all kinds of problems will occur. So we can take that now as a fact. And the revolution that we're coming into and living through as we speak, as of 6 or 7 weeks ago, on the day that we're recording this, the FDA approved the basis of this idea as a new therapy to treat inflammation in patients with rheumatoid arthritis. And I think you're right. I think this is launching a whole new era in medicine where bioelectronic medicine will begin to replace drugs. So that's
a big statement.
It's a big statement, but it's backed by the facts, and it's kind of fundamental, as you said, laying the fundamental groundwork to this conversation. When you look at the role of childhood trauma and inflammation and long-term health, the results are absolutely fascinating. And I know that you've talked about this in the past on your show, and you've read these papers, but one of my favorite studies that nails the point of this is if you look at elderly graduates from college and gave them a survey and said, okay, what was your father's income when you were, I forget, 4 or between 4 years old and 10 years old or something like that. And so these people filled out the survey and they made an estimate of whether they were rich or poor based on their father's income when they were little. And then the researchers measured salivary cortisol in these patients. And what they found was a near perfect correlation, inverse, between their father's income and how much salivary cortisol was present, and meaning how much stress their body was carrying throughout all those decades of life, 5, 6, 7, 8 decades of life. The lower the income, the higher was the cortisol in the saliva. So what does that mean? That means that the nervous system, the brain, which controls the pituitary gland and the pituitary adrenal axis that makes steroids, the nervous system, it carries an engram, it carries a memory or an imprint of the stress that occurs when you're young. And that can be translated back to the body, in this case, through signals in the pituitary adrenal axis. But if you look at other indicators that say heart rate, resting heart rate, or resting heart rate variability, there's evidence, and those are controlled by nerve signals, not hormonal signals.
Right.
So signals in the vagus nerve, which is parasympathetic, and signals in the sympathetic nervous system either accelerate or decelerate the heart. That balance lives in, if you will, in the brainstem, in the brain. And that turns out to be influenced by childhood stress. And those effects can last for many, many years. So if signals in the nervous system can be modulated by childhood stress, that's a fact. And if signals in the nervous system can turn on or turn off inflammation through the vagus and sympathetic nerves, and that's a fact, then the answer to your question is yes, there's definitely a relationship between stress, nervous system control of inflammation, and how much inflammation you bear in your body, which of course then can put you at risk for complications in your organs from too much inflammation.
Let's talk about how that might work. By the way, isn't this fascinating, everybody? So, and by the way, there's ways, everyone, pretty simply, that you can actually see how you're doing with this stuff. So let's
Good afternoon, guys. I remember hearing a while ago that on the other side of fear is freedom. And this is so true. I have seen and felt this in my life, and I continue to experience this every single day. Even when I look at this, getting in front of the camera and sharing videos with you about my thoughts, feelings, and things that I know or feel could help you. It is not easy, but that's where determination steps in. That's where that energy, that spirit, that drive that we all have within us to face our fears and keep going every single day, choice by choice. And I can tell you, it is working. It's not easy. It's very difficult, but it's possible. And it's all about going after and attacking our fears. And on the other side of those fears is the freedom we're looking for. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
And reach for our toes with straight knees. Here we go. Again, enjoying fully. Reaching for our toes. Just like we're reaching always in life. Striving to be better than we were yesterday, a minute ago, a second ago. That's pure happiness. That's joy of learning, infinite mind wealth. Okay, and let's go V-shape now. And reach for the floor. Here we go. As far away from your body as you can. Feeling certain muscles being stretched. Your ability to think about that. That's your awareness and that's your determination. The power to control your thoughts. To focus on your being right now. And switch. Reach for one side. And reach for the other side. Again, you're trying to touch your toes. If you don't, that's okay. Just reaching. Feeling the joy of going for it. Alright. And let's pull our feet together and gently push our knees down with our elbows. Here you go. Feeling the pull a little bit on the inner thighs, just a little bit. As we gently use our elbows to push our knee towards the ground. Okay, one leg forward, one leg back. Go as far back as you can. Keep that knee on the ground though. And let's hold it there for 10 seconds. And switch to the side. Okay, and again, go as far back as you can, but keep your knee on the ground. A little bit limited with some space here, but we'll do our best. Always do our best. That's what we got. Okay, and let's go into cobra stretch. So, belly's on the ground, push the floor, and look up at the ceiling or the sky, wherever you are. Wherever you are. Here we go. Hold it for 10 seconds. Alright, good everyone. Okay, and legs crossed, back straight, eyes closed. Once again, feeling that power to control our breathing the way we control our mind and our thoughts. So right now, let's see ourselves doing the best we can when that music goes on. For me today, I'm going to play 2 songs. Again, feel free to listen to my songs or have your own playing. But whatever you do, pick 2 exercises or 2 stretches or 2 movements that are safe within the space you have. And for one song, the duration of one song, try to keep going in that one specific exercise activity. For me, I'm going to be doing planks, holding the plank position for as long as I can for the first song, hopefully the whole song. And for the second song, I'm going to see in my mind right now, holding side plank position for each side for the duration of that song. I'm going to see that in my mind right now. Right now, see in your mind what you want to make real when that music goes on. See it with the full power that it's possible. See it with the full power of belief and intention, determination to do your best to make it happen. Here we go. Alright, here we go, determination. It's all about belief. You gotta believe in yourself. Here we go. I believe I can do this. Let's see. What about you? What are you doing? Are you doing planks like me? If you are, let's go. The whole song. Listen to the words of this powerful song. Everything's about believing in yourself. Everything. It all begins there. You believe that you can do something? Do you believe that? No matter how long it takes, no matter how hard you gotta work, if you don't believe it, it'll never happen. Belief is the activating force, the key to unlocking the full power of our minds. And then we gotta determine to do it. There we go, everybody. Always believe. I miss and love your determination. I miss and love you all the time. But we are here right now together. We are united. Right now, working on holding a plank position maybe. I don't know what it is you're working on. You're doing a dance or something or an exercise. Keep moving. Keep going. Don't give up. Let's go. The whole song. We're doing this. The whole song. That's right. Evan's right. We gotta fix our mindset. Meaning, if we correct our thoughts, turn them into nothing but positivity and belief in ourselves, all the rest of the anxiety, mind health challenges, all those lying thoughts will just go away. But you gotta do it. You gotta do it. Determination. Only you can do it. Only you can believe in you. Actually, others, of course, can believe in you, but the number one thing that will matter is whether you believe in yourself. You don't want to waste everyone else's belief in you. It'll all go away if you don't believe in yourself. But we were born to do it. We were born to believe in ourselves. first and foremost, to love ourselves no matter what. To know the truth of what others feel about us if they believe in us too. Almost there, almost there. Song's almost over. Let's go. Determination, let's go. Awesome work, determination. All right, next song.
Up for Sosa. Of course, Otmar Hitzfeld familiar with him as well. Ball in for Aguero. The back heel, Messi shot! Near post goal! Out of Wolfsburg, breaking free Messi, and he's got some help. Senderos can't stop him! Wolfley! 12 yards away. The icing on the cake for Messi. A hat trick.
Let's use me for a second. Okay. So, first off, everybody, give yourself the gift of just learning a little bit about the sympathetic nervous system. We're not going to get too much into that today just because there's too many other things to cover. But let's just call the sympathetic nervous system for the layman. You're in a fight or flight mode to some extent. So take a guy like me. I grew up with some childhood trauma, alcoholic father, got sober when I was 15. But those first 15 years were a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, a lot of worry. Also in my family, I think a little skosh of mental health issues. A little maybe Scotia depression in there, like a touch. You know what I mean? And so I think I grew up in a fight or flight mode in my sympathetic nervous system. I wasn't parasympathetic very often. Now I find myself at 55. I've had some health issues in my life. And my resting heart, I'm fit. I work out 5 days a week. I'm in the gym. I've got low body fat. I've been fit most of my life. Yet my resting heart rate's almost 80. And my HRV is incredibly low. Like last night was 11. Most nights it's like 15. Does that mean those two metrics, you can educate them on HRV as well a little bit. Does that mean, is that indicative that I am probably in sympathetic nervous system mode and not parasympathetic most of the time? Is that what that would indicate? In other words, high heart rate, low HRV, is that indicative of somebody that's in fight or flight mode most of the time, more than likely?
There are some that would say that to you, that yes, it is. I'm not sure. I would be much more honest and say I'm maybe. Before I drew a conclusion, let me back up a second. The problem with some of these things is when all the data fits with a dogmatic idea, it's very easy to jump on the answer being the dogma. The problem is when you scratch the surface of the dogma and try to understand where do these definitions and measurements come from, you realize that you kind of run out of data really quickly. So in the case of measuring fight or flight, you would want more than just knowing your resting heart rate and your heart rate variability. You really would also want to know your hormone levels and your levels of cortisol is one we talked about a minute ago. You would want to know your cortisol levels. You would want to know your norepinephrine or epinephrine levels. Those are very hard to measure. They have to often measure the byproducts or the metabolites of those in either blood or urine. You'd want to have a much more sophisticated analysis, and you would want to have it over long periods of time for many days in a row. So think of the example of diabetes. A patient's worried about measuring her glucose levels, and she's a diabetic. She might take a glucose measure at some random time of the day and see it's perfectly normal, and then go ahead and have whatever, a candy bar or an orange, and then not measure it till sometime later and see that it's still normal. So, okay, I don't have diabetes. But if she measured her hemoglobin A1C, which integrates the glucose levels over many, many hours, days, and weeks, she would find that the hemoglobin C was off the charts because the glucose was spiking intermittently. We don't have quality measures for inflammation, frankly, or for sympathovagal balance. There are some that advocate for using heart rate variability as a gold standard of sympathovagal balance, but that's also actually much more controversial than you would ever figure from looking at social media. What is heart rate variability? So if you look on an EKG, you see each heartbeat, or if you feel your pulse, you feel a distinct beat of every heart in your wrist or your neck. If you actually have a stopwatch and measure the time between individual heart rates, you can write down all those times in sequence. And then you get a long sequence of numbers that are called instantaneous heart rates. Now, when the vagus nerve fires, it prolongs the time to the next heartbeat. That's why vagus nerve slows your heart, because it prolongs the time between heartbeats. If you have a lot of vagus nerve activity, and that's happening frequently, now you can subject these data, which can be obtained on EKGs, for instance, or Holter monitors, where you can follow EKG signals for many minutes or hours. You can add up and analyze with statistical algorithms all of these instantaneous heart rates, and you can derive predictors of that guide us to what we call heart rate variability, and people refer to this as vagal tone. If you look at the high frequency domain after sort of a Fourier transformation of these complicated data, there's a little spike which has been correlated with vagus nerve activity in humans. But is that the whole answer? Well, it depends on the algorithm, right? So your Fitbit and your Apple Watch and your other wearables, they're all using different algorithms, and they're all proprietary. Mm-hmm. So one person's heart rate variability may or may not be being measured the same as another person's.
Okay, everybody, I want to get you in the weeds here. We're going to talk about solutions here in a second and why it matters. So stay in here, and it does matter. Okay, so you say in the book that the brain listens to the body, and then it talks back through the vagus nerve. And with the right tools, the body can heal itself. And it starts with the great nerve. So let's actually prove that. Let's talk about this. So I'd like you to talk about, this is going to blow your mind, everybody, but the work that's recently been approved as it relates, I think in the book I'm reading about arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, and the work you've done. So he said something pretty controversial earlier, guys, which essentially is that, I'll call them pharmaceuticals, but that essentially maybe electricity in the body and the ability to stimulate itself that way could replace or at least mitigate the use of pharmaceuticals. You go, no way. Well, actually, here's some studies and some evidence that will maybe begin to change your mind about this. So why don't you tell them a little bit about basic concept that, you know, the brain listens to the body, and what you believe with the right tools, the body can begin to heal itself. And it starts with this nerve. Give them that foundation, and then the work you've been doing with arthritis. It's just, guys, you're not going to believe this.
It's a fascinating observation that if you inject inflammatory molecules that produce inflammation in either a mouse or a man, that those molecules will cause the mouse or the man to develop what we call a sickness behavior. So anorexia, depression, withdrawal, social withdrawal. These effects are very real, and you've all experienced them if you've ever had a bad case of the flu. Where you just want to crawl in bed, you don't want to eat anything, you don't want to see or talk to anybody, you don't even want to engage in any hobbies because you just withdraw. Those molecules, those cytokines like TNF and IL-1, they produce those effects because when they're in the body, the vagus nerve senses them. And the vagus nerve carries electrical signals from the body up into the brain that basically tell the brain, hey, there's a lot of cytokines in the body. And the brain's response is to produce that depression, that fatigue, that behavioral withdrawal, and that anorexia. So this has been proved in animals, because if you cut the vagus nerve in animals, which you can do in mice, you can't do it in people. But if you and then give those cytokines, the mice don't get sick. It's very remarkable. It's very remarkable. So what happens to those signals going up into the brain? Well, the brain is processing the incoming signals as too much inflammation in the body, and it sends signals back down the vagus nerve to turn the inflammation off. And that basic discovery, which I alluded to before as the brakes, like the brakes in your car that are the brakes on your inflammatory response, that allowed us to write on the back of a napkin in 1998. Well, if the vagus nerve is using electrical signals to turn off inflammation, we should be able to develop to engineer a biomedical device that we could implant on the vagus nerve to activate those brakes, to stimulate those signals. And
Good evening, guys. As we live, laugh, and love our way to infinite mind wealth, this thing called fear, it's all in our minds. This is the thing that we have to conquer. And I want to share with you a personal story as we're talking about fear today and trying to overcome our fears. And hopefully today you were able to look at one fear, stare it down, and overcome it. But I want to share with you my fears of just getting in front of the camera, my fear of public speaking. And we can laugh at it because when I look back on my journey thus far, especially in the new year, I'm amazed because even to this day, when I step in front of this camera and share my thoughts with you, it's interesting because my heart beats a little bit faster, but it quickly gets stopped. Whereas before, in the beginning, it was uncontrollable. And maybe you would never see it or know it, but I laugh at it now because I think, wow, we can defeat our fears. And I want you to as well. Have a great evening, everyone. All right, side planks for me. Here I go. Holding one side for half the song and maybe holding the other side for the other half. Listening to, again, powerful music, energy, words. Bob was right. One love. Bob Marley knew the truth, just like you know the truth. We all know the truth. We're made of it. Of course. If we just take our minds when they're negative and they're anxious and stressed and fearing, if we took our minds, our thoughts, and just moved them out of the way, all there is love. We are made of pure love, pure infinite intelligence. We get to work on our bodies, our minds all the time to be the true beings that we were born to be. Even if we feel like quitting, it's hard. It's hard to control our minds, to get it out of the way. But we can do what we were born to do. Alright, let's go to the other side now. Here we go. Oh, love it. Feeling the sweat. All that old fluid leaving the body. Make room for some new, good fluid. Here we go. Just like our new thoughts. We get rid of the old thoughts that don't serve us to make room for new, good thoughts, positive thoughts that serve us to be who we were all born to be. Love. That's it. Simple. No hate. No anger. Those things are going to be there. We're going to feel it sometimes, but with our determination, we can determine love, not hate. Determination, not giving up. Happiness, not depression. Joy, not sadness. How's everyone doing? Hanging in there, keep going. We're almost done. Let's always be united together, just like we are right now, right here. Alright. I'm proud of my effort. How about you? How about you? How about you, determination? I'm proud of you. I love you.
Messi just tried to loft it in, and anything that Messi tries, Messi can do. And now Messi, again, and again, and again. Lionel Messi finds the net. Fabregas forward towards Lionel Messi. He's onside. Another chip, another goal, another brilliant goal. Messi, Pedro. Messi couldn't quite get to the return. Or can he? Yes, he can.
Those signals, once stimulated, would break or slow the inflammatory process. And so that was on the back of a napkin in 1998. We worked on this for 6 or 9 years to prove to ourselves that it would work safely in animals. And in 2007, I co-founded a company called Setpoint Medical, which is the company that developed the device I just described and proved that it works. The device is about the size of a multivitamin or a fish oil pill. It sits under the skin, under the strap muscles in your left neck at about the level of your Adam's apple. And it delivers for 1 minute a day a small pulse of electrical activation at 400 microamps. I mean, it's almost nothing for 1 minute a day. Many of the patients actually sleep through this 1 minute a day. They don't even know the treatment's happening. But because this treatment activates the inflammatory reflex, which is what we call it, and turns off inflammation, what we're seeing is that in a clinical study of rheumatoid arthritis patients, now these patients were not benefiting from biologics. They were not getting better. They still had severe disease despite the fact they tried all these powerful medications. And what we saw was that about 75% of them gained significant clinical benefit from having vagus nerve stimulation implanted in their neck. It's really incredible, actually.
It is incredible. And, you know, everybody, there's so much to unpack. This should be a 4-hour show, but it begins to make.
I got time if you do.
So do I, by the way. Maybe we'll do multiple shows, but it starts to make you wonder, everybody, what are the other applications and implications of this vagus nerve stimulation, doesn't it? And I mean, are we going to have a world, in your opinion, someday? You said electricity over chemistry someday in the body. Do you think, you know, in the next 5 or 10 years, you're going to see a world where we're running around with these chips stimulating our vagus nerve to help reduce or mitigate diabetes or rheumatoid arthritis, heart disease, cancer? Do you see a world like that, or is that premature to say that that's possible?
I see a world very soon where many, many people with rheumatoid arthritis in the United States will have this as a therapy. I have met some of the patients. I have met Kelly Owens, who spent 12 or 15 years in and out of wheelchairs using a cane, which she no longer needs. I mean, she gave me her cane. It sits in the corner of my office now. Her therapy is vagus nerve stimulation. And she's now 7 or 8 years out from the implant. So the effect is durable. I've met a teacher who has it's called an immunoregulator from Setpoint, this vagus nerve stimulator in her neck. And she said it wakes her up at 4:30 in the morning. I said, I'm sure the engineers can change it to stimulate your vagus nerve later in the morning so you can sleep in. She goes, no, Kevin, I don't mind. I said, why don't you mind? And she said, because I'm a teacher, and for years I would wake up in the morning at 4:30 and with pain in my hands so severe that I would cry because I was afraid I wouldn't be able to get dressed to go to work or pick up a pencil. She goes, now I wake up at 4:30 in the morning and this thing buzzes and I smile because I don't have any pain in my hands.
So you were careful there. I watched you. You were careful to say rheumatoid arthritis. I'm not asking you to predict. I'm asking you your opinion. Do you think that there's implications or applications in diseases beyond arthritis?
100% I do. I'm painting right now the fact that there's a pond covered partially in pond lilies, and we know the doubling time of the pond lilies, and we know the surface area of the pond. I think you can make very concrete predictions about a significant use for rheumatoid arthritis in the U.S. based on the current FDA approval. Because of that, it's a baby step to look at other inflammatory conditions where we already have data either in humans or in laboratory experiments. In humans, there's very convincing data in small trials that will have to be repeated in larger studies for the treating Crohn's disease, inflammatory bowel disease, and ulcerative colitis. There is very compelling animal results in multiple sclerosis, and I think you're going to see SetPoint announcing, if they haven't already, clinical trials to treat multiple sclerosis, and that'll happen immediately. That, you know, if it's not open now, those trials will be open soon. You're going to see news about the possibility to use various vagus nerve stimulation-based therapies to treat diabetes and potentially even metabolic syndrome or obesity. There's fascinating data about the relationship of vagus nerve stimulation to enhancing neuroplasticity, which is the phenomenon that can enhance recovery from injury and stroke, and the FDA has approved that indication already. There's fascinating data in treating depression. More hundreds of thousands of people have already received vagus nerve stimulation therapy for treating epilepsy and depression. Now, what's fascinating to me about depression is it works really well, but only about half the time. So what is it about those 50% of patients that get better from vagus nerve stimulation therapy versus the 50% that don't? That has frankly slowed its use, its adoption into widespread practice. Prescribers don't like to not know the half, right? It makes sense. On the other hand, some of the responses are people who were suicidal, unable to care for their families, unable to work, and now if they're in the half that respond, they're not suicidal, they're caring for their families, they're back at work. So what is the cost benefit of that? And my question in these kind of situations is it possible that the vagus nerve stimulation is reversing the inflammation that's causing the depression? So these are the kinds of questions that I guarantee you're going to see a huge amount of new work being done in the next few years.
Guys, is this crazy? By the way, in a minute, we're going to talk about daily practices that you can implement that are simple to help stimulate the vagus nerve or potentially move you into parasympathetic mode here. But before I ask you that, I want to ask you, your take on these devices that are available in the market. They sit on your ear. I won't name them, but I've got 4 of them next to my bed right now. I've tried all of them. That are these devices that suggest that they can stimulate the vagus nerve by some stimulation on your ear. There's a couple that work on the neck, supposedly. What are your thoughts on those? Without
as you know, because you read the book, I have a lot of thoughts on this, and some are good and some are not so good. So let's just recall what I said in the beginning. You have 2 vagus nerves, but you actually have 200,000 vagus nerves. So it's complicated. It's complicated because each and every one of those fibers, 200,000 fibers, was honed and perfected by millions of years of evolution to start at a particular place in your brain or body and go to a particular place in your body or brain. So it's got its own path, it's got its own route, it's got its own destination and origin, and it has its own function. So when someone says to me, I want to stimulate my vagus nerve, I say, you have 200,000, which one do you want to stimulate? And what we've done with the SetPoint device is we figured out that 400 microamps only stimulates a few hundred, maybe a couple thousand fibers, and those happen to be the fibers that stop inflammation. So that's the good news, right? A very low amount of current placed directly on the vagus nerve can do a specific thing because it targets specific fibers. That's not true when you put electric current in your ear or on your neck. It's not possible to have the evidence in humans yet because we can't measure the vagus nerve electrical signals, which would be the ultimate proof that you've stimulated the vagus nerve, unless you're putting a device on the vagus nerve. The reason people are interested in putting a device on the ear, for instance, is because there's a branch of the vagus nerve that goes to the cartilage of the ear, a small part of the cartilage, the outside of the opening to your ear. It's called the sympoconcha. Now, that's a sensory branch, which means it's carrying information about what's happening in the cartilage into the brain, into your brain stem. And it happens to go to the place where all the other incoming information goes from the vagus nerve. So that's interesting. And there's pretty good evidence from many studies that if you put a small amount of electric current using a TENS unit, a transauricular epidural nerve stimulator, that you can now put people in brain scans, and you can actually show that the areas of the brain that are activated by a TENS unit in your ear correspond to many of the vagus nerve centers in the brain. So that so far so good. That's interesting. And then you can do clinical trials, and you can study the effect of a TENS unit in the ear on all kinds of things: opioid withdrawal, migraine headaches, inflammation in various conditions, whether it's Crohn's disease. We've done that. We've done arthritis associated with lupus, or you can do blood tests and look at inflammation, and we've done that. Now, what you see in these small studies oftentimes is some signal. You see the less inflammation. That doesn't prove it's a vagus nerve stimulator. Okay, once you drive those signals from the ear into the brain has 100 billion neurons and trillions of synapses or connections. So it can do whatever it wants with it. It doesn't mean that there's a direct path from your ear to your spleen to stop the inflammation that's headed to your intestines or your wrist. So that's where it breaks down, right? It's like correlation is not causation, right? The correlation between some clinical benefit from doing something in your ear or your neck doesn't prove that it's a vagus nerve stimulator. Putting all that aside for a second, if you can afford to buy, a half a dozen devices and play with them at different times of the day and night, if you like to self-experiment, if your doctor says it can be safely done, that's all fine and good. But some people can't afford these 6 devices, and they buy them because they're out of options and they're desperate and they're reading crap on some website selling something that's exaggerating the clinical benefit. That's where I kind of recoil a little bit, because at the end of the day, you have to either understand the scientific mechanism of action, which I just explained is impossible or very difficult with a TENS unit in your ear, or you have to have large, well-controlled, randomized clinical trials that have been validated by the FDA. And in most cases, frankly, those things are just... So I wrote the book to explain all this, not to attack anybody, not to criticize anybody. And like you, I don't name the names of these devices because, frankly, some of these non-invasive devices do have interesting clinical outcomes and clinical results. They're just not vagus nerve stimulators. The only way to stimulate the vagus nerve is to put an electrode on the vagus nerve.
I love your approach, by the way, and your demeanor. Let's talk about stuff that doesn't cost anything.
That's even more interesting, right?
It is. So I'm going to throw 2 things at you, and they're not correlated, but they're 2 things I do pretty regularly. So, by the way, and they're one of them is really in vogue. So, what about prayer? And these are completely disconnected things, but they both don't cost anything. And so, prayer, and is that a biologic tool? Is it a spiritual tool? Is it both? So I'll give you these: prayer/meditation, and just cold therapy in general. Just speak to those and why they matter or don't for you.
Let's do them in the opposite order, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So I am a fan of cold therapy. A couple times a week, I'll put the shower on full cold at the end of my normal shower, and I'll stay in there for a bit. And let's just talk about why I do it and what I think's happening. Not just what I think is based on studying the evidence. The normal caveat, please check with your doctor. There are patients who should not do this without checking with their doctor to make sure that they don't have a fainting episode or problems with their heart. But what happens when you step in that full cold shower is it hurts. It's uncomfortable. All the air goes out of your body. You feel like you can't breathe. It's terrible. And people say they enjoy it, and I have a more nuanced view of that kind of enjoyment, and I wrote about this. So I see you smiling. It's really much more like I've done it for now for several years, a couple times a week, and every time I step in that, because I step out of the hot shower, let it get cold, and then step back in, and every time I step back in, half of my brain is screaming, "Don't do it, you fool, you fool, you fool." And then you step in, and it's highly uncomfortable, and I'm not, I don't think you get used. It's not that you get used to the discomfort. You're fully aware of it, but it just doesn't bother you in the same way. And the way I describe it is I feel like, boy, that person doing that cold water thing is really foolish and is really suffering and uncomfortable. But it's like I'm watching that person rather than fully experience. The first time you do it, you fully experience it, right? And I highly recommend the first time you do it, you don't do it. You don't do full cold. There's no reason to. You can work up to it over a period of days or weeks. Now, that is fight or flight. You talked about it before. That's fight or flight. And what we know from, we've infused fight or flight hormones in human volunteers on shore leave, and we've studied this in animals. The acute fight or flight, which is what's happening. Your heart rate races. You've got that horrible feeling you can't breathe. Those hormones turn off inflammation. So for me, check the first box.
Okay.
If the whole idea is to have an anti-inflammatory sort of experience, check that box. Then I stay there. Sometimes I hold my breath while I'm doing this, and I stay in the cold until I feel my heart rate slow down. And at that point, I know I've stimulated the vagus nerve. I hope that the fibers that to the heart are also because I've stimulated those and my heart rate slowed. I hope I've also stimulated the fibers to slow my inflammatory response in my spleen and elsewhere. But that's a little more difficult to prove. And the studies on cold exposure, adapted cold exposure, where people there's some studies from Scandinavia where they took soldiers, military types, and they put them in a cold room, like 4-degree centigrade cold room, and sprayed them in cold water and put a fan on them, and they let them stay there for a long, long time. Some of those studies show pretty decent evidence that their heart rates slow down and their inflammatory responses are slowed down. So that's why I do it, and that's how I put it together. The fight or flight, that acute stress response, that's a massive fight or flight response, that's anti-inflammatory. And then the cold adapted response is a vagus response, and that's anti-inflammatory. But, what about then the chronic stress you talked about earlier in the show, in your own life and in your listeners' lives? Chronic stress is not really full-blown fight or flight that we just talked about. Chronic stress is low-grade, persistent fight or flight. It's not the same thing. Low-grade chronic fight or flight stimulates inflammation. And that's really important. So you can have it both ways. Fight or flight can be good for you, and that's probably what happens when you exercise. Exercise is a form of controlled good stress, controlled fight or flight. But it's that chronic gnawing away, eating at you fight or flight at low levels that actually produce inflammation. So that's why I do the cold showers. Now, there's other ways of doing it, and there's people advocating, and there's billions of web impressions on vagus nerve and cold, billions. And everyone's, some of them are based on good science, and some of them have to be treated with a little bit more caution in their interpretation.
What about prayer?
So prayer is complicated because it involves relaxation responses, and it involves changes in your breathing. Okay. And so the simple answer is, if you wanted to take it to the highest level, as you suggested in the beginning of the show, if you check your pulse and you have a slow pulse during prayer, you've stimulated your vagus nerve by prayer. But you said, is it spiritual or not? Well, that's hard to prove, but you can prove to yourself that by changing your breathing pattern, you can slow your pulse. So you could do it right now, right? You can check your pulse and you can breathe in on 3 slowly through your nose. What happens when you take 3 sort of big breaths, 3 seconds, 1, 2, 3 seconds, usually Some people advocate taking it as sniffing through your nose for 3 seconds. You fill those lungs, you've stimulated your vagus nerve. But let's talk about that specifically. What you've actually stimulated are the sensory fibers of the vagus nerves from your lungs to your brains, because you've expanded your lungs that stretch. The signals goes up and they tell your brain, okay, this guy or gal has filled their lungs, and so you've stimulated your vagus nerve. Is that really the same thing as the fibers that go to your heart or your spleen? Not really. But then what happens after the signals go into your brain? Now you exhale for 7 seconds. And if you check your pulse, you'll feel it slow. That's called respiratory sinus arrhythmia. And now you're breathing on a 10-second cycle, 3 plus 7, and that would be 6 breaths a minute. If you keep doing that for a few minutes, you'll notice during exhalation that your heart rate has slowed, because the signals from your brain are traveling down your vagus nerve to slow your heart. Now, if that happens during prayer or any type of meditation or relaxation therapy, then yeah, it's a good thing to slow the vagus nerve, to stimulate the vagus nerve and slow your heart. Hopefully, those methods are also slowing the amount of inflammation that your body makes, but it's very, very difficult to prove that. It's not well proved.
Right. Isn't this good, you guys? All right, a few more things, and I want everybody to go get The Great Nerve by Dr. Kevin Tracey.
Here we are again, ending the way we begun today together. Knowing the truth, though, that nothing ever ends, nothing is ever over. Determination is never over, never done. Because we are an energy. We are one energy. The way we take control of our breathing in this moment, the way we did our best today on all the exercises and stretches we did, that's the same way, same process we can use to make the best decisions. No, not decisions, determinations. Positive choices, loving choices, peaceful, grateful, mind healthy, mind wealthy choices, determinations. We don't choose and lose, we determine and win. Just like we won again today, here, right now.